Okay, here we are in a new episode of Second Voice, and today I have Danielle here. She's in New York. Hi, Danielle. How are you? How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, great. I'm fine. I'm meeting you after many years because we met here in Peru a few years ago, and we are having now a conversation that I was waiting for. Um, Daniel, well, as I told you, we are here to tell your story about language learning and moving abroad.
hmm
So I want to start at the beginning. So first of all, where were you born? In what country, city?
Yeah, so I was originally born in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm from the United States. But my mother was born in England and grew up in Jamaica, and my father is from St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
U.S. Virgin Island. Okay, okay. Um, and did you grew up in the U.S.? So did you live your first years in the U.S.? U.S. Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how was your the situation in your family over those few years with languages, especially?
Sure, yeah. So we only spoke English in the home. My father was actually adopted by a woman who was Puerto Rican.
Okay.
So there was one time where we went to Puerto Rico to see family, and I heard a little bit of Spanish in that setting, but otherwise, I never spoke any other languages.
Okay. So in the community where you were born, which is New York, yes. Well, as I know, New York is very diverse. Yes, receives a lot of immigration. So, how was your connection with other languages when you were a kid there in New York?
Yeah, so I mean, I remember distinctly hearing other languages when I would take the subway or just walk on the street because, like you said, it's a really diverse city with a lot of different communities in New York City. So I do remember having that exposure. And then at around 8 years old, I started taking Spanish classes and became even more aware of kind of the different languages around me.
Oh, great, great. And did you start taking Spanish classes at the school or by your own?
Yes, at the school. It was actually my mother's idea to sign me up for classes, and it wasn't a requirement. I actually went to school really early in the morning before school started and took Spanish classes.
Into Spanish classes. And so it was your mom's motivation.
Yes, she thought it was
Yes.
important to know multiple languages.
Oh, that's great. And how was those classes? Did you remember? Did you enjoy the classes? How
I
was the
did.
interaction? The other kids? Who were the other kids?
Yeah, so there were only about four other kids in the class besides me, and I really enjoyed it. I remember just really being interested in, especially the way that you conjugate verbs in Spanish and the different vocabulary that I was learning. So I really liked it.
Hmm, great. And what about the school system where you studied your elementary school? Did did they introduce you to languages, to Spanish? Did you have an obligation to learn languages at that age?
Yeah, so we had the option of learning a language. It was never required. Once I got into middle school and then high school, there were more formal classes, and you could even get like early college credits for taking language classes, but they were never required, always optional.
Okay, okay. And so, as you were studying Spanish at that private school, yes, first. Then in the school, in the elementary school, so you follow the path of Spanish,
hmm
yes.
Yes.
And how was the learning Spanish during your elementary school or middle school or high school? Yeah.
Yeah.
How was the situation in your school?
Yeah, it was really great. I actually, throughout middle school and high school, I had teachers who had immigrated from Spanish speaking countries. So they integrated a lot of the culture that they were accustomed to into the curriculum. So, along with learning language, we would have days where we would try foods from different Latin American countries, and we would do class projects where we could kind of get more creative and write essays in Spanish and things like that. So I really enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, and did you? So I can guess that maybe as you're living in New York, you used to have opportunities to apply what you were learning at the school in the streets, maybe, or in some events. Did you do that? Like, did you just start making friends in Spanish there in New York?
I wish I did. Actually, there weren't many students at my school who spoke Spanish as a first language. But I did have a friend whose family spoke Spanish. So I remember in about high school starting to use it a little bit more around her family. But otherwise, I wasn't really able to practice as much as I think I would have liked to.
Oh, okay, okay. And what about your family? So when you were at home, you said that your mom has this motivation for learning languages. So did they learn Spanish at some point?
I wish they did. They didn't. I think they learned words here and there that I would teach them. But, I think there's this kind of belief that once you get to a certain age, it's very hard to learn new languages. So for them, I think they were more motivated to make sure I learned a language from a young age, since they felt like at that point in their life it was much more difficult to learn.
Okay, okay. And well, after finishing your high school, uh, what did you do? So where did you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to college at Princeton University, and while there, I majored in comparative literature, which is the study of two languages with a textual discipline. So I chose to study Spanish and Portuguese, and then my textual discipline was actually molecular biology, interestingly enough. And while at Princeton, I had the opportunity to study abroad twice. So the first time I ended up going to Mexico and living there for 3 months. And while there, I took Spanish classes at a university, and I lived with a family in Mexico City, actually. And then,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. Wait for a minute.
First,
I want to stay a little bit, yeah, in your studies when you were studying at Princeton. So you said that you were studying comparative literature, yes, Portuguese, Spanish, and biology, molecular biology. So those are very different, like, areas
They
of
are.
interest.
They are, yes.
How did you end choosing those areas?
Yeah, it actually ended up stemming from my experience in Peru. So I ended up doing my thesis on feminism in Peruvian literature and integrating some of the female reproductive rights issues in Peru that I had observed and learned about in history. And so the combination for me, because I was interested in going into medicine, was really using literature to look at kind of like medical and social justice
Wow.
issues. So
Oh, that's yeah, it's awesome. It's very interesting. Yeah, yeah. I haven't met so many people with those very different areas of interest that connect them. Yeah, very well. So you were passionate about literature and medicine too. So you took that decision, and during those years studying at Princeton, uh, did you keep learning Spanish, like in a language school or something like that?
yes, I continued taking classes. There were a set number of classes you had to take to graduate with that degree. So I took classes throughout my time, and then I also there was like a written exam that you took at the end in Spanish to kind of prove your fluency in Spanish and then my ability to read and write in Portuguese.
Hmm. So, and when you took those classes about comparative literature, uh, how was the interaction with the languages? I assume that you learned in real Portuguese in Spanish. You produce texts in those languages?
Yeah, so at the point where I started learning Portuguese, I was already at a pretty high level of Spanish, pretty advanced. So it was much easier to kind of learn the grammar and the syntax of Portuguese. The accent was the hardest part for me because it's so different, the pronunciation. Um, but in terms of reading, I found it much easier, I think, because I had learned Spanish first. So that was, yeah, that was helpful.
Okay. And how was that methodology of learning there, this comparative literature? So did you interact at the university with native Spanish speaker, native Portuguese speakers? Yeah.
Yes, yes. All the professors I interacted with were native speakers. And there were actually classes, the Portuguese class I took was specifically for Spanish speakers. So you had to have a certain level of Spanish to take that Portuguese class, and they used our knowledge of Spanish to help teach us the new language.
Okay, okay. So you were learning a very. Did you feel at that time that you were learning like a very academic Spanish Portuguese?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I did. And in fact, when I studied abroad, I found that I learned a lot more quickly kind of the differences in vocabulary between academic Spanish and kind of formal Spanish, and then what you conversationally would hear more so in different countries.
Oh yeah, yeah. Maybe at some point, I don't know, but maybe at some point you feel did you feel like a gap between academic and conversational? It was like a block, a wall for you, or was an advantage?
You know, I think at first it was a challenge, especially when I first got to Mexico. I found that I was so focused on the grammar that I wasn't able to speak as fluidly as I would have liked to. And also, there were certain words in certain countries that meant one thing versus another. So I think that at first that was a challenge, but in hindsight, I'm glad that I learned the structure and the grammar because I think that's what stuck with me. So that now, even though I don't speak Spanish very often, I can still kind of think in that more methodical way.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it helped you a lot to maintain the language
Hmm.
over the years.
Hmm.
And so you said that first you went to Mexico to do exactly what?
So I went to Mexico as part of a study abroad program. While there, I took Spanish classes at a university, and I also took public health classes there. And I lived with a family in Mexico City to really integrate myself into the culture. Spend months at a time not speaking English, so that I could really get my level of fluency improved more.
Oh, and how was the Mexican experience? So you were studying there, and your connection was more with the academic world, or did you have that other experience in the real Mexico? The host family just spoke to you in Spanish.
Yeah, I had both. That was what was really great about it. So I had the academic experience, and I took a literature class, and it was actually only two students, me and then another student who was a native speaker. Her whole family spoke Spanish, and it was really challenging because we had to write essays, and
Oh yes.
it was a higher level than I was used to. But then I also met friends at the university, and we went out to parties, and we went, out to explore the city, and that really taught me the more colloquial and kind of conversational Spanish.
Oh yeah. What was the university? Which university?
Universidad Panamericana.
Okay. It's in Mexico City?
In DF, yeah, in Mexico City.
Ah, okay.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. And how was the relationship and the interaction with your host family?
It was great. Oh my goodness, it was great. They became my family, basically.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, just being able to be welcomed into someone's home the way I was, and, eating the food and understanding more of the culture, I think that bond that I made with those people, I mean, it lasted to this day. I still have a friend who lived in the same house, who she now travels more, but we still keep up by text, and she's come to visit New York a few times, so it definitely was a great experience.
oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I've been there in Mexico City. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then and could you get the Mexican accent into your Spanish?
I don't know. I feel like my accent in Spanish is very mixed because it's like I learned academic Spanish and more like the Spain Spanish at first, and then lived in a few places, and I don't really speak very often. So I don't know. I don't think so, honestly.
Oh yeah, I'm curious now because in a few minutes I'm gonna listen to your Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then you finished your three months in Mexico, yes,
Mhm.
and then you went back to the U.S. It was like that.
Yes, then I went back to the U.S.
What did you do there?
And then I did so Mexico was after my second year of college. So I came back, I did my third year of college, and then I went to Peru after that.
Okay, how is I don't understand very well the system in the university. So you were studying the two disciplines at the same time, and how did you end? What was your degree at the end of that?
So yeah, so the degree was comparative literature. But
Okay.
within that major, you have to know two languages and the textual discipline. But everyone has different languages and different textual disciplines. That was dependent on the person, but it's still the same degree, if that makes sense. Yeah, comparative literature
Okay.
degree.
Okay. And what about the molecular biology subject?
Yeah, so that was my textual discipline, which
Ah,
basically
okay.
just meant that I took classes in molecular biology along with my language classes, and I tied that into my thesis.
Ah, okay, okay. Oh, okay. So you combine them into your investigation.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. That's great. And where is your thesis? Because it sounds very interesting
Oh
to
yeah,
read. So it
yeah,
can be read.
yeah. It was on feminism and Peruvian literature, so
Wow.
it's online. Princeton posts everyone's thesis is online.
So it's opened.
Yep, everyone can see it.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna ask you. Maybe yeah. I'm gonna ask you about the link,
Sure,
and if you want to share, I can put it
sure.
in the description box.
Yeah, disclosure, I was only 22 years old. This was like the first thesis I ever wrote, so if you see any typos, don't tell me.
Yeah. Don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah. And did you write the thesis in English or in Spanish?
In English, but the literature that I quoted was sometimes in Spanish, so I left it in Spanish depending on what I was
Ah, okay.
analyzing.
Okay, great. Great. Uh, so then you told me too that you had the Peruvian experience, and so why did you come here?
Yeah, so I saw a listing on the university website for an internship that involved public health, which I was really interested in at the time. And so I ended up going to Peru to do research. And I ended up getting paired with the Minister of Health who worked at a university at the time.
Hmm. And why did you choose Peru for your investigation?
Honestly, I think it was the combination of my interests and the fact that it was a Spanish speaking country, because I really wanted to continue learning Spanish and practicing Spanish because I really didn't have any family or friends to practice with. And then also, the fact that it was a public health a public health project. It was one of the only ones the university offered.
Okay. So I know you were here in Lima because we met
Yeah.
in Lima. Yeah. And so how was your life in Lima? Who did you live with?
Yeah, so I lived with another Princeton student who traveled there to do a different internship than me. So we moved into an apartment in Lima, and we didn't know anybody besides the people that we worked for. So we kind of just met people through, going out and also just using apps and kind of getting to know people that way.
Okay. So in what were the intercultural experiences that you have had here in Peru? So there was, for example, when you were working in your investigation, where did you go? How did you interact with the people here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the project that I was working on actually was a self-testing for HPV project. And we went into the communities outside of Lima and basically did research on how the program was going. And the idea was to be able to, in more rural areas, provide people the means to self-test for HPV so that we could prevent cervical cancer. So I was able to kind of spend a lot of time with community workers, kind of see what the more rural environment was like outside of Lima, and it really helped me to kind of develop a better understanding of the culture, for sure.
Where did you travel here in Peru? For your work?
Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name
Uh,
of the town.
it's outside Lima?
It's outside Lima, like in the mountains, more so.
Okay.
I
Okay.
wish I remembered the
Yeah,
name.
yeah, don't worry, don't worry.
Yeah.
There are yeah, there are many places. Okay. Yeah. So, and how did you value your experience in Peru? What did you end knowing about Peru in
I
conclusions?
loved Peru after ending the experience. The food, the culture. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway for me was just how kind everyone that I interacted with in Peru was and open. I think that also just learning about the food to this day, I'll still make lomo saltado for myself, and I love ceviche, and like I carried a lot of things I think over with me after leaving.
Okay. And did you feel any difference in the way of uh, learning the language between being in Peru and being in Mexico, or
Mm,
do you find similarities,
that's a good
differences?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I mean, I think because in Mexico I was taking kind of structured Spanish classes, I found that I was learning a more academic Spanish in that setting. But in Peru, because I was more so in the community and working with community members on my research, I started to learn more of what I would say was a Peruvian Spanish in terms of the accent that maybe in Mexico I didn't learn as much.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That makes sense. Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. Yeah, like it's like in Peru you were on the ground with the people who speaks like daily Spanish.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe in Mexico you were more with the students.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that type of interactions. Yeah. Okay. So and so then how many months did you stay in Peru, or years?
Only months, yeah, 3 months I stayed in Peru.
3 months.
Hmm.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. Then you went back to the U.S. and what did you do there?
Yeah, so I went back to the US. I finished my last year of college, and then I graduated. And honestly, ever since then, I haven't had any formal instruction for Spanish. I haven't really had many conversations in Spanish outside of with patients because I actually ended up going to medical school after college, and There is a Spanish-speaking population at a few of the hospitals that we rotate through, so I've been able to use my Spanish a little bit in those settings.
Huh. It, and when you went back to the U.S. after Peru, uh, what did you feel about your Spanish level?
Oh,
How was your Spanish level?
it was great. I feel like I was able to even dream in Spanish sometimes. It was like, I really felt fluent and very confident, which is a great feeling to have, since English is my first language. And definitely when you don't use it, you lose it, for sure. So
Yes.
by, I think, the end of college, I would say that already my fluency, I felt less confident in. It was still there, but it takes a little while to warm up, kind of like riding a bike.
Yes.
So
So, yeah, after you graduated, you haven't had opportunities you haven't taken classes again
no,
in Spanish, uh, and you haven't had like um, social meetings or events where you can no
no,
practice.
nothing, no,
No, no, no.
unfortunately, no.
Yeah, and there are there any other activities where you practice Spanish, like for example, reading books or watching movies? You do
Yes,
that?
yes. I mean, I love the show Money Heist on Netflix. I
Ah, okay.
watched,
La Casa de Papel. Yeah.
yeah, I watched that in Spanish, and try to kind of. I think TV is a nice way to try to keep the language fresh in my mind. I also joined. There's a Spanish speaking club at the medical school that kind
Mm.
of goes through medical vocabulary, so that when you're talking to a patient in the hospital, you're able to kind of use proper medical terms. But other than that, no, I'm extremely rusty.
And what happened with your Portuguese?
Oh, my Portuguese, it definitely, because I learned it later, now it's like I'm barely conversational in Portuguese. I can read, but mostly that's because I think the Spanish that I had. But
Oh yeah.
and I can understand what people say, but it's very hard for me to put together a sentence the way I could back then.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. You haven't tried to learn another language, like a third language?
I have been trying a little bit to learn Armenian. I know like maybe 2 words. But I feel that it's so much more difficult to learn a language now at my age. I don't know. I think because I learned Spanish so young, I feel like it just became a part of my vocabulary, the way I thought about language. But now I
Yeah.
find it so much more difficult to pick it up. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. But you haven't like consciously tried to learn a language, because
no.
I would say that maybe as you have learned like Spanish and then Portuguese, you could have this ability, natural ability, to keep
Maybe.
going and
Yeah.
learning more languages.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
could be. Yeah. Um, so right now, what are you doing um, for languages? Are you actively doing something for languages, or
No.
isn't your plan?
It's so I plan on getting a medical Spanish certificate as part of my degree as a doctor, so that I can see patients and speak Spanish in clinical settings. But for that, all they require is an online test, and you basically talk with someone on the phone. They make sure that you can speak pretty well, and then you get that certificate at the end of your time in medical school.
Okay, okay. And do you have plans to go abroad again, or to live in another country, maybe for your work or profession?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. There's an Ecuador trip that they take the medical students on that I have been thinking about maybe doing next year. Um, And then Doctors Without Borders is something that I've also been interested in, just being able to go to other countries and do public health work. But yeah, right now it's just been focusing on getting my degree and getting through school.
Oh, okay, okay. And so, after talking about this, what would you say have been the most helpful, like, action that you've taken to learn Spanish and to improve your Spanish over the last years?
I would say risk taking, like being comfortable, being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Because I think I learned the most Spanish when I was speaking to people constantly and immersing myself in the culture. I think learning a language, especially for anyone who learns a language, I think it can be nerve-wracking at times and difficult because you can't find the right word in the language or you get nervous. And I think the biggest thing that's helped me is just kind of jumping right in and kind of surrounding myself with people who speak the language natively and embracing the culture.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I agree with you on that. Yeah. And now I want to hear your Spanish. I'm very curious.
Okay.
Yeah, because well, people who is gonna listen this is that well, they don't know, but we met some years ago here in Lima.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I don't remember, as I told you before, if we talked in Spanish or in English.
Yeah, I think it was a mix because I was learning Spanish, you were learning English, so I think it was kind of a mix.
Maybe. Yeah. So let's go to Spanish. So, vamos al español.
Okay.
Ahora.
All right.
Y tú sabes que en inglés tu nombre es Danielle. ¿Y cómo es en español?
Daniela.
Daniela, sí, de hecho. Bueno, Daniela. Ya que estamos aquí con el español, o sea, es un poquito la misma pregunta, la última que te hice, sobre en español, ¿cuáles dirías que han sido los mejores recursos o acciones que has tomado para mejorar tu español, ¿no?
Sí. Creo que para hablar con gente, para aprender la cultura, cosas así, son muy importantes para aprender el español para mí, porque sí, es muy difícil si no hablas y practicas la lengua para hablar y para estar cómodo con la lengua. Pues sí, hablar con gente, creo que es eso.
Claro. Sí, 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 es verdad. Y tú dijiste algo en inglés que es la capacidad para tomar riesgos, ¿no? Y que tiene que ver con, sí, acercarte a la gente, hablarle, ¿no? Dejar un poco la timidez. Que supongo lo que has hecho en México y en Perú sobre todo, ¿no? Sí. Y hay otra pregunta que no te he hecho en inglés, pero es, bueno, este podcast se llama en inglés Second Voice. Y bueno, en español sería segunda voz, ¿no? ¿Tú sientes que cuando, o sea, en el proceso de aprender español y ahora que hablas español, sientes como que eres una segunda persona? Es como, ¿sientes algún cambio en tu identidad?
Es una pregunta muy interesante. Sí, más o menos sí. Sí, creo que en unas maneras, cuando hablo español, tengo que usar una parte de mi mente diferente y sí, en esta manera es como una segunda persona. Sí.
Claro, claro. Es verdad, es verdad. Sí, es verdad. Y también, sí, puede ser esto. También he escuchado que hay gente que dice que, claro, que en un idioma, o el nativo o el aprendido, se atreven a decir cosas o se atreven a hacer cosas que en el otro idioma no.
Sí.
¿No? Entonces, a veces tiene que ver con esto.
Sí.
No sé si tú sientes eso, que en español eres más tímida o tomas más riesgo o te atreves más.
Oh, más tímida, sí, sí, en español, porque estoy, no sé, estoy pensando en como la gramática y la conjugation,
Conjugaciones. Sí.
conjugaciones y tal, pues, pero en inglés no tengo que pensar en esas cosas, pues, um, sí, puedo hablar más rápidamente y con confianza.
Claro, claro, con confianza, sí. Sí, muy bien. So, let's go back to English.
Okay. Woo.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, yeah. How did you feel speaking Spanish?
I felt good. I think it's like the more you speak, the more it comes back. But I think just the pauses from trying to remember, okay, I know what I want to say in English. What is that in Spanish?
Yeah.
And even the sentence structure, like in Spanish, is different. So, um, conjugating the verb and thinking, okay, if I start the sentence talking about the past tense, I need to conjugate. And is it in perfect tense? Is it, preterite, past preterite? Like, how do I kind of create the sentence and make sure it makes sense? And even the adjectives, knowing if it's
Yes.
female or male, and talking about myself or generally. So I think it's just a different way of thinking. And, it's unfortunate. I wish that I had practiced more since Peru so that I could kind of speak with more ease. But I think that if I try to immerse myself again, hopefully it'll come back little by little.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It happened to me. It happens to me with English too, because sometimes, yeah, I have to think a lot about, for example, when I want to use a word. I don't know if this is a natural word or not. It's a word that a native English speaker will use in this situation. So I'm constantly thinking about that. Yeah, it's difficult. It's a challenge. Well, this is the last part, Daniel. So I want to say thank you for being here, for sharing your story with us. So, and I want to read your thesis. I'm very
Sure.
interested in that, really,
I'll send you a
for
link.
sure.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah. Thank you, Daniel. See you soon.
Yes, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.